in this business, in the business I've been in, I've been trying to figure out how to motivate voters from 18 to 34 forever.
Well, maybe this will do it, Chris.
Yeah, maybe this will do it. I keep hearing that. Every consultant who's trying to sell you an idea tries to tell you this in your politics, and guess what? They don't vote.
That was former Republican Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey on ABC News this past Sunday, saying if President Biden hoped to woo younger voters with his decision on student debt cancellation, it was wishful thinking. But well before the president's move on student loans, Generation Z did show up to the polls in the past 2 national elections in record numbers. With the midterms now just a couple of months away, will that trend continue? And what issues will drive their vote? This morning, we're kicking off a series diving into those very questions about Gen Z. Morning Joe reporter Daniela Pierre-Bravo has this look at the young progressive activists who played a key role in Biden's 2020 win and what they're thinking headed into November.
Generation Z, those born between 1997 and 2012, have quickly become one of the most sought-after group of voters today.
There's no plan B! There's no plan B!
These young Americans in their teens and 20s are more politically active than their parents were at the same age, and they voted at record levels in the last midterm and presidential elections. They helped propel Biden into the White House and played a key role in helping Democrats capture majorities in the House and Senate in 2020. And with the midterms just around the corner, the Gen Z vote will be just as crucial. Gen Z for Change is one organization that rallied around President Biden and is once again trying to bring as many young people to the polls.
Speaking to young people directly and saying, you have to get out the vote in these races that are often separated by a few thousand votes is very, very important.
They're passionate about issues like climate change and gun control. And while the White House recently celebrated wins on both, Gen Zers are demanding more. Reproductive rights is just one of the top issues Gen Z voters will be looking to have addressed in the midterms and beyond. For Gen Z voters like Nora and Isabel, who both live in swing states, the fallout from the overturning of Roe versus Wade is top of mind.
It was such a big thing that I think that will get a lot of young women to the polls if they weren't already going.
I also couldn't help but feel for the millions of women who needed abortions that now couldn't, or even the medical people who don't know whether to provide care or not to a dying patient because they don't know if they're going to get sued for it or not.
The decision on Roe could very well motivate more young people than ever before to the polls.
What are you seeing in terms of excitement over whether or not your generation, Gen Z, is actually going to show up to the midterms?
I think Generation Z is definitely going to show up. I will be very surprised, and I am quite confident that this year will have record high youth turnout because Generation Z is absolutely very, very angry.
Santiago Meyer is the 20-year-old founder of Voters of Tomorrow, a political engagement platform for Gen Zers. He has a message for Democrats who want to win the Gen Z vote.
When young people do vote, they flip elections. I mean, young people in large part are the reason why Donald Trump is still not in the White House. Young people are in large part the reason why Democrats currently hold the Senate and the House.
Joining us now, Director of Polling at the Institute of Politics at Harvard University, John Della Volpe. He's an MSNBC political contributor and author of the book, Fight: How Gen Z is Channeling Their Fear and Passion to Save America. Great to have you on.
Yeah, it's great to have you on, John. I want to follow up with what Chris Christie said, because it's what I said during my political career. I would go to colleges and, when I started running, I was 29 years old. So I went in going, well, gee, younger voters are going to vote for me and older voters won't. It was just the opposite. The older voters voted for me overwhelmingly. The younger voters didn't go out to vote. And after about 2 or 3 terms, I'd go speak at colleges, I'd go speak at high schools, and people would ask, well, why don't you ever advertise on our radio stations? And I said, because you don't vote. I could say, I'll show you the numbers. You guys just don't vote, and you need to vote. And every time you hear somebody saying, oh, this year it's when the young people are going to get out and vote, I always say you're going to leave politicians waiting at the altar because they never show up. But I take it you are here, and we just had that package. Because this political reality just may be changing. Tell us about it.
Well, I think you're right, Joe. And, you know, your experiences, right? We're in the 1990s, a generation ago, when younger people were Gen X or basically Gen X and some baby boomers, right? And that's the issue, I think, with Governor Christie. He's thinking about generations past. Everything that so many baby boomers think about young people today is just wrong. We saw in that package that they are more angry, they are more anxious, but they are also more committed to justice. And in the 2018 midterm election, where there had been an average of about 16 or 17% turnout to the previous 30 years, we saw a doubling, 35, 36% turnout. We saw record levels of engagement in 2020. A young voter in college voted at the same level as the average of all Americans in 2020. Joe Biden is not president of the United States today without young people, specifically in those 5 battleground states. Politicians, Republicans, specifically Democrats, they ignore them at their peril. And what we've seen, Joe, over the last several months is not only them committed to voting, even before Dobbs, there was a level of commitment to voting that we talked about from the April poll, but now it's supercharged on the combination of what the Supreme Court did, but also the positive work that Democrats have done around gun violence, the Inflation Reduction Act, and of course, student loans just a week ago.
So, John, if you take out, you just mentioned the 3 things that have been done that may appeal to younger voters, and I'm sure that student loans was younger voters were on the minds of people in the White House when they were thinking of that student loan legislation, understandably. But one of the things that I've been hearing is actually it was the Inflation Reduction Act and specifically the issue of climate change, and that perhaps that is the single overriding issue that Gen Z is concerned about, and they are right to be concerned about it. They are inheriting a mess that we have left them. Is that something, do you think, that if you were really trying to rally young voters and there was a single issue that you were going to try and break the historic pattern that Joe talks about, what would it be? What would the issue be that would get them to the polls?
Yeah, I don't know if it's as simple as one specific issue. I think climate change, Gadi, is other table stakes. But I think what's critically important to understand young people, and that's the significance of student loan debt last week, is keeping your word. Articulating a clear vision, a clear set of values that align with a generation or 2 generations of voters, which will outvote baby boomers in the next presidential. 40% of the electorate will be millennials or Gen Z, and give specific examples, as President Biden said in his speech last night, not just of words, but of actions that affect a generation. Climate change, gun violence, student loan debt. These are all examples of government, specifically a party, keeping their word, building trust. And that's how you encourage generations to vote.
All right. We should mention again that this is part of a series. John's going to be looking at young Republicans coming up, specific battleground states. Director of polling at the Institute of Politics at Harvard University, John Della Volpe, thank you very much for being on this morning.